Lawrence of the Resurrection. The Practice of the Presence of God. Introduction. But I fear, lest by any means, as the serpent beguiled Eve through his subtlety, so your minds should be corrupted from the simplicity that is in Christ. 2 Corinthians chapter 11, verse 3. The value of this little book is its extreme simplicity. The trouble with most of the religion of the day is its extreme complexity. Brother Lawrence was not troubled with any theological difficulties or doctrinal dilemmas. For him, these did not exist. His one single aim was to bring about a conscious personal union between himself and God, and he took the shortest cut he could find to accomplish it. The result can best be described in his own words. If I dare use the expression, I should choose to call this state the bosom of God, for the inexpressible sweetness which I taste and experience there. What Brother Lawrence did all can do. No theological training nor any especial theological views are needed for the blessed practice he recommends. No gorgeous churches, nor stately cathedral, nor elaborate ritual could either make or mar it. A kitchen and an altar were as one to him, and to pick up a straw from the ground was as grand a service as to preach to multitudes. The time of business, said he, does not with me differ from the time of prayer, and in the noise and clutter of my kitchen, while several persons are at the same time calling for different things, I possess God in as great tranquillity as if I were upon my knees at the blessed sacrament. This little book, therefore, seems to me one of the most helpful I know. It fits into the lives of all human beings, let them be rich or poor, learned or unlearned, wise or simple. The woman at her washtub or the stonebreaker on the road can carry on the practice here taught with as much ease and as much assurance of success as the priest at his altar or the missionary in his field of work. All must feel that anything that brings the religion of Christ within reach of overworked and poverty-stricken humanity, in the midst of its ignorance and its helplessness, is a priceless boon. And this is what Brother Lawrence does. His practice requires neither time nor talents nor training. At any moment in the midst of any occupation, under any circumstances, the soul that wants to know God can practice the presence and can come to the knowledge. The Lord of hosts is with us. The God of Jacob is our refuge, let the seemings be what they may. And we need but to recognize this as a continual, ever-present fact, and the inexpressible sweetness to which Brother Lawrence attained will become ours. Hannah Whitall Smith, London, 1897. Preface. This book consists of notes of several conversations had with, and letters written by Nicholas Herman, of Lorraine, a lowly and unlearned man, who, after having been a footman and soldier, was admitted a lay brother among the barefooted Carmelites at Paris in 1666, and was afterward known as Brother Lawrence. His conversion, which took place when he was about 18 years old, was the result, under God, of the mere sight in midwinter of a dry and leafless tree, and of the reflections it stirred respecting the change the coming spring would bring. From that time he grew eminently in the knowledge and love of God, endeavoring constantly to walk as in his presence. No wilderness wanderings seemed to have intervened between the Red Sea and the Jordan of his experience. A wholly consecrated man, he lived his Christian life through as a pilgrim, as a steward and not as an owner, and died at the age of 80, leaving a name which has been as ointment poured forth. The Conversations are supposed to have been written by M. Beaufort, Grand Vicar to M. de Chalon, formerly Cardinal de Noailles, by whose recommendation the Letters were first published. The book has within a short time gone through repeated editions and has been a means of blessing to many souls. It contains very much of that wisdom which only lips the Lord has touched can express, and which only hearts he has made teachable can receive. May this edition also be blessed by God, and redound to the praise of the glory of his grace. Conversations. First conversation. The first time I saw Brother Lawrence was upon the 3rd of August, 1666. He told me that God had done him a singular favor in his conversion at the age of 18. That in the winter, seeing a tree stripped of its leaves, and considering that within a little time the leaves would be renewed, and after that the flowers and fruit appear, he received a high view of the providence and power of God, which has never since been effaced from his soul. That this view had perfectly set him loose from the world, and kindled in him such a love for God that he could not tell whether it had increased during the more than 40 years he had lived since. That he had been footman to M. Fubert, the treasurer, and that he was a great awkward fellow who broke everything. That he had desired to be received into a monastery, thinking that he would there be made to smart for his awkwardness and the faults he should commit, and so he should sacrifice to God his life, with its pleasures. But that God had disappointed him, he having met with nothing but satisfaction in that state. That we should establish ourselves in a sense of God's presence by continually conversing with him. That it was a shameful thing to quit his conversation to think of trifles and fooleries. That we should feed and nourish our souls with high notions of God, which would yield us great joy in being devoted to him. That we ought to quicken, that is to enliven, our faith. That it was lamentable we had so little. And that instead of taking faith for the rule of their conduct, men amused themselves with trivial devotions, which changed daily. That the way of faith was the spirit of the Church, and that it was sufficient to bring us to a high degree of perfection. That we ought to give ourselves up to God, with regard both to things temporal and spiritual, and seek our satisfaction only in the fulfilling of His will, whether He lead us by suffering or by consolation, for all would be equal to a soul truly resigned. That there needed fidelity in those drynesses or insensibilities and irksomeness in prayer, by which God tries our love to Him. That then was the time for us to make good and effectual acts of resignation, whereof one alone would oftentimes very much promote our spiritual advancement. That as for the miseries and sins he heard of daily in the world, he was so far from wondering at them that, on the contrary, he was surprised that there were not more, considering the malice sinners were capable of. That, for his part, he prayed for them. But knowing that God could remedy the mischiefs they did when He pleased, he gave himself no further trouble. That to arrive at such resignation as God requires, we should watch attentively over all the passions which mingle as well in spiritual things as in those of a grosser nature. That God would give light concerning those passions to those who truly desire to serve Him. That if this was my design, that is to say, sincerely to serve God, I might come to him, Brother Lawrence, as often as I pleased, without any fear of being troublesome. But if not, that I ought no more to visit him.